Hi, Laura. Welcome to Biz Therapy Podcast again, our podcast project to help people out through COVID, stress, work stress, personal stress, all kinds of difficulties, depression, you name it. Would you start today by talking a little bit about your background, your expertise, family even, how many pets you have?
Okay. Hey, John, glad to be here with you today. Talk
Great.
about stress in the workplace, COVID, and a variety of things. But, I began my career in counseling in the employee assistance field and really have worked in a variety of different organizations, helping them address the behavioral issues that impact the workplace, and have worked with employees so they can have a better work-life balance, a better experience at work, really understanding the dynamics and the organizational issues that impact us. We spend a great deal of our time at work, and a lot of issues can come up as a result of that, and we can bring a lot of issues to work. So my expertise, I'm a certified employee assistance professional, a substance abuse professional, and a substance abuse expert, in addition to a licensed professional counselor. So I take my clinical skills to the workplace, assisting employees and leaders in the organizations to address the mental health concerns that come up as a result of being a human being.
Yeah. So it sounds like everything that you just mentioned, all levels of expertise are probably utilized all the time. There's so much going on right now.
There is a lot going on right now. We have seen an increase in just about every mental health concern, depression, anxiety. There's an increase in alcohol abuse and substance abuse, an increase in domestic violence, kind of an increase in people seeking help, seeking resources. I think one of the things, the benefits of the pandemic is the attention that mental health is getting and the desire for people to have mental wellness, and for companies taking responsibility for helping their employees reach that state of well-being, recognizing that their mental wellness is as important as their physical health. And so really taking that on and hiring employee assistance professionals to be available to those employees to help them be healthy at work and healthy in their lives.
Well, in my professional background, I don't have specific expertise in alcohol, drug, things like that you do. Mine is we have part the same: licensed professional counselor, mental health services provider, supervisor, that sort of thing. So, a lot of times when we talk about this, you and I used to train in what's called Tennessee Drug-Free Workplace. We go out to companies and they would bring us in and we help them get on board and start the program. And I think probably now more than ever, that's useful and needed in companies.
And needed. Yeah. I read an article yesterday that 9 out of 10 employees who are working from home are consuming alcohol. That's during the workday. That is an astounding figure. Yeah. So I think that there are a number of contributing factors to that. People are at home and perhaps they are not going to function like they would in the workplace. They're not going to adhere to the same, they're at home. So what's the harm? It creates a number of problems because it's really difficult as an employer to monitor someone's behavior when they're working from home. I mean, you can, for somebody who is impaired, that's more obvious from a managerial standpoint. But for somebody who is just under the influence, that may be harder to assess and detect.
It reminds me of someone I worked with. It's been maybe 6 months ago, in the just a few months after COVID and working from home hit, and people were really starting to struggle with being gone and away from their friends, their cohorts.
Hmm.
And one person that was referred to me was actually caught sipping wine on a Zoom meeting, a company Zoom meeting, and
Oh,
she just
wow.
became mindless of it because it had become a
Right.
practice, like you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Well, I think, all of us have a need to kind of break free from the stress to escape.
Yeah.
I think it's human nature to want to self-soothe, to engage in escapism.
Hmm.
And alcohol is a very risky, substance to engage in. It just is, from an addiction standpoint. I mean, addiction, no one starts drinking with the idea of becoming an alcoholic. They begin with just using, just drinking because they like the taste of it. They like the way it makes them feel. Use continues to become a heavy use, and then heavy use can become problematic and can lead to dependency. So it's a slippery slope to get on. And when I think it's tough for employees, and it's tough for organizations to monitor and to provide assistance. And I think it's also they're trying to develop and trying to teach and their employees, offer them other opportunities, other you know um, teach mindfulness. There's there are a number of apps that you can utilize that will provide the same sense of relaxation as a glass of wine, and it's not going to hurt your liver.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point. I was going to ask you, when somebody's lonely, isolated, getting basically their job done, uh,
Hmm.
but they're suffering to the point where they're starting to drink more and maybe not feeling that. What are they feeling when they're drinking? That, let's just go right to what you said. That maybe relaxation. One of the healthy mindfulness apps like Calm and Sanvello and Mindspace, or um, intentionally designed relaxation music, things like that. Can those things can those replace what alcohol gives a person? What's going on there?
Well, I think one of the things that alcohol does is it gives you that dopamine dump in the beginning. It lights up your brain, and the problem that it also causes is it's also a drug, and it changes your brain after you have that first glass, and it impairs your judgment. So your ability to make a good decision after that is gone.
Okay.
Um, have been studies that mindfulness and meditation do create the same kind of brain benefits, or better brain benefits, and um, other things to engage in for that positive dopamine, physical activity, getting your heart rate up. That's a more productive. The other dangerous thing about alcohol is the after effects. So because it affects your brain chemistry as you withdraw, and even from one or two drinks, you're physiologically withdrawing from that. Your brain is recovering from that assault, and it's going to increase your anxiety. So that's the irony. A lot of people that I've talked with, that I've consulted with, will say they drink to relax. Well, that, because it is a depressant, that might be the immediate reaction. But when your brain chemistry responds to it, it actually makes you more anxious. So you get into this vicious cycle of seeking that relaxation that you can never obtain. So if relaxation is what you're looking for, finding another way to calm your brain,
Yeah.
meditation, mindfulness,
Hmm.
gratitude, um, engaging in some of those apps you talked about, talking to a friend, going for a walk. Um, that there are a variety of things. But what happens is, um, sometimes you can mindlessly engage in an activity that's self-destructive.
Yeah. When, how do you know when there's a crossover taking place, like in the workplace? Like you were talking about a minute ago, people drinking. There's these studies and these articles being written
Mhm.
and being reported where there's more and more drinking during the workday. Um, and there's organizations, there's companies that from other countries that have come here, and they build products. And I've got old friends that work there that they drank all day long some
Mhm.
couple of decades ago, and I think they set that aside because they
Yes.
realized that, like you said, it's hampering their productivity.
Right.
And
Yeah.
what how does a person go from, boy, this feels a whole lot better, to, I'm in a dangerous spot? I What can they become aware of? What can they become conscious of to be self-aware?
Mhm.
Certainly with you, your background and my background and what we do, we can say, check your insurance company, look for EAP, go talk to somebody, get an
Mhm.
assessment. But what about self-assessment? What would they have be able to pay attention to, maybe while they're listening, while they're watching today, and go, I'm crossing over into a dangerous place here now? What would you look
Yeah. Well, I think the hallmark sign of addiction is the inability to stop once you start. So if you find yourself having more difficulty sticking to, and sticking to moderate consumption of alcohol, and moderate is one alcoholic drink for women and one for men. And an
Mhm.
alcoholic drink is a 12-ounce beer, it's 3 to 5 ounces of wine, and it's 1 ounce of liquor. So if you're not able to maintain that moderate consumption, uh, that would be a red flag. It's once you start, you can't stop. Is another hallmark. And then physiologically, just how you feel. There was an article in the paper this weekend talking about um, people who made the decision during the pandemic to stop using alcohol completely. Not that it had crossed into a problematic drinking and they wouldn't necessarily meet criteria for a substance use disorder. However, they recognized the health, uh, detriments to consuming, and that they were falling into a pattern of increased use, and so talked about the benefits and how much better they felt physically and emotionally when they just eliminated it. And they, talked about, and I thought this was interesting, just eliminating it completely, not necessarily because they had an addiction issue, but when they took it off the table, it was no longer, you know, it wasn't a problem and it wasn't a benefit. It just was not an issue. But I
Mhm.
think for the employee who is, reaching for that glass of wine during the workday, there was a time I know when I joined, when I started working after college, it was pretty common for people to drink at lunch, for people to, have alcohol at the parties at work. That's not common any longer,
Yeah.
that for a number of reasons. So, treat your work at home life like you would at the office. And if you're finding you're consuming alcohol during the workday, it's probably time to talk to somebody.
Yeah. Um, I really appreciate that because I think there's a lot of people that are trying to dull the isolation pain,
Mm-hmm.
and they might drink while they're working, and then I wonder if they kind of aim over to, or you're like, well, would I rather work and get and feel accomplished and keep my job in a great position and serve the people that I serve, or take another drink? And when
Mm-hmm.
it becomes real fuzzy and blurred right there, um, into choices,
Mm-hmm.
um, that seems to be a real important point for a
Well,
person.
and I think you're touching on it. You're really touching on when somebody crosses the line from use to abuse to a dependency, and
Yeah.
it really occurs on a continuum, and there's a variety of ways of how do you know you're going there? And so I think it's from an individual's perspective, it stops being a choice. And that's, for somebody who doesn't have an addiction issue, it's very difficult to understand, because from the alcoholic's perspective, the drink is the solution.
Yeah. Okay.
And so when that's not your solution, it's really hard to understand that. So typically when somebody has reached the point of dependency, other people are making comments to them, and you pay attention to that as well.
I hope, like you're talking about earlier, about being able to perceive this through Zoom meetings and regular meetings of the work and things like that. And it's very hard to do that. But when people are so isolated,
Right.
how do they have that cohort of people, that cadre that's going, hey, be careful, something's going on here, we can tell, because we're more removed from that sort of thing. So that becomes a concern.
Absolutely. And managers don't have the same interactions with their employees, so that there is an isolation. So again, I think that kind of comes back to the workplace and putting some responsibility on the workplace in terms of making sure their employees are mentally healthy, that they're not engaging in day drinking, that there's, and I think some of it is just talking about it, of bringing that up. And then, I think, there's sort of two sides to it. It's the person to do the individual assessment, ask themselves the hard questions, but then it's also up to the managers to monitor their employees and to try to observe and pick up when things seem different, when performance is problematic, when attitude or behavior seems to be impacted.
I think one of the most caring things, especially right now, that an employee can appreciate is when a manager actually steps out and shows human concern for them, not just concern for the numbers and the productivity and how many keys they're typing. Some of the systems of the people that I talk to have that sort of overreach and that monitoring on a level like that. But they actually reach out and they pick up on things and they ask and they solicit, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you coping okay being alone? One of the first things I picked up in the last, say, couple of months is how much more longer-winded most everyone I speak to is right now.
Right. They have a lot to say.
And they don't have anybody to tell. There's just not that emptying of that social interaction.
Right.
I had a friend share something. I want to see what you think of this. And I'm thinking of it like when let's say somebody goes to a Sanvello app or a Calm or Mindspace or something, and they're learning to be mindful. They're learning to pay attention to themselves. Those are tremendous skills. But if they don't have that, not tuned into that sort of self-monitoring and mindfulness, somebody shared this quick definition of addiction and recovery. And I'm wondering, because there's an element that seems like in this, that if someone's moving here, they're not there yet, but they're moving there, there's real appropriate alertness there. I won't say anxiety. That's not a very healthy way to approach it. That just creates more trouble. But a decision to plan and change things. Here's the definition. It's very short. Addiction is giving up everything for one thing. All right. Recovery is giving up one thing for everything.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so
good?
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
really
going to post it later in this podcast when we put it back out there right about this point. I'm going to stick it up there so people can look at it and screenshot it and have that. Because I thought I wanted to bounce that off you because I thought that's pretty concise. And there's this, like you mentioned, the abuse and then finally addiction. And then, as we've always talked, addiction just doesn't get better unless you stop.
Right.
you know.
Well, I think the other part to remember is that addiction is a brain disorder. It's your brain trying to kill you.
Yeah,
And so, it's the obsessional thinking that comes into play where that one thing is the only thing.
yeah,
So that's a question to ask yourself or to notice. If is it the only thing? Is it the one thing? How much time do you spend thinking about it?
yeah,
How much of your energy is devoted to that?
yeah,
The other part is you're so right that recovery is all about having everything. It's having your life back. It's having that freedom. It's having that ability to be in the world comfortably.
yeah. When you're choosing freely what's the healthiest thing for you and those that you serve,
Hmm.
those you work for and work with, that is a different place than looking for the next drink, thinking, to get through the day, I need to cope with that. I need that to cope,
Yeah.
things of that nature.
I've heard it described too, and I thought this was a pretty powerful image of imagining a raging river, and you're in the middle of this river hanging on to a log. And this log is your addiction, your obsession, or whatever it is that's keeping you afloat. You
Hmm.
can't imagine getting to the other side. If you let go of that
Oh,
log, what happens?
yeah, yeah.
So, but that's the only way you can get out of the water. Gotta let go. And that's also tough too. I mean, um, it's not really an intellectual exercise. It's hard work.
But
Um,
there is that point of letting go and having
mhm.
some kind of faith you're going to float, and start
Yeah,
looking for another way to get out.
right. That
And
you'll
you can
find
find
other
it if you look
options.
for it. It's there if you look for it.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
there are a ton of people there to
yeah.
help you do it. Yeah.
Well,
Recovery is
it's
possible.
been,
Mhm.
yeah. I'm just sitting here thinking about where we've been in just this short conversation, and moving all the way into these really concerning symptoms and things to pay attention to, things to be mindful of for people who just aren't even starting to do that. And I hope people who are paying attention and following along with this podcast, it becomes helpful for them. But let's move back to the beginning, and then let's
Mhm.
jump to some things you can do about it, some healthy choices. What do you think is a typical leading indicator from normal, healthy to just leading, things that are so subtle, most people don't pay attention to them, not to scare anybody, but to help people be wise to it?
To taking that first step to health, or taking the first, or the,
Becoming
I'm
aware
sorry.
that, yeah, I mean, drinking.
Awareness is the first step. Yeah. So there are really kind of three A's, awareness, acceptance, and action.
Okay.
So, and there's the, what I talk about is the pre-contemplative. So you're thinking about it. So,
Okay.
it, and people who are in that state understand what that is, or who have been in that state. When you're thinking about it, it's
Hmm.
the same kind of thing. And probably every woman has had this experience when you put on the dress or put on the blouse, and it's like, oh, it's a little tighter than it used to be. Or looking in the mirror when you get out of the shower thinking, something doesn't look right. You have that awareness, but maybe you're not taking action. You're not kind of accepting that's what it is, or you're not
Okay.
ready to take action on it. So awareness is just in having that self-reflection, that perspective that, oh, this potentially could be, it could be an issue. It's also, we gain self-awareness by listening to what others say to us and how others speak to us and give us feedback. And that can be very powerful.
Yeah.
um then the acceptance of it, part of it, and the accepting that this is an issue and the readiness to take action on it. Um, you know, Part of what I think is another tough part of addiction, and part that's made this hard, uh, the pandemic hard is its control. That's
Mhm.
the irony, is that, that trying so hard to control this thing that's controlling you.
Mhm.
And the, the difficulty of letting go. And, that's the serenity prayer, being able to accept the things you cannot change.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a lot out there we can't
There's
change.
a lot. There's a lot that we
We
cannot
can
change.
influence some things, but
Sure.
control.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No.
And
Um, and the
that causes a
tremendous.
lot of emotional pain to demand we control things that are completely out of our realm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can spend a lot of time and energy, wasted time and energy, trying to control things we can't control.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
there's tremendous relief in being able to let go of those things.
I liked what you said at the leading edge. If somebody's concerned, then get some sort of feedback. You
Yeah.
know.
Ask
Yeah.
somebody about
Just
it.
reach out to somebody. Say, what do you think? Do you
Yeah.
think I'm drinking too much? Are you drinking at all? Yes. Yes, you're drinking too much. Or find some kind of feedback. Professional, if you've got insurance, if you got EAP, call in,
Hmm.
health department nearby, you name it. You know,
Yeah. There's a
get
variety of resources. I mean, you
keep your job.
can, yeah, seek out Google's help if you're,
Yeah,
lacking a person that you could talk to.
absolutely.
Generally, if you're thinking that you're drinking too much, you probably are drinking too much.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
usually.
There you go. Good answer. What do you think people can do on a regular, everyday? We talked about this a little bit recently.
Hmm.
Like start the day off in a more mindful, relaxed, focused, healthy kind of a place. And I mentioned exercise is a great
Hmm.
de-stressor. We mentioned relaxation apps, mindfulness
Hmm.
apps, or anything else, music that's out there.
Hmm.
Um, I think one thing that if anybody who's watching this is curious about any of that, just send an email in or something. We'll respond to it. But
Yeah.
when, what were you saying? You got an interesting ritual in the morning that it's free and it's energizing and it's simple.
And it's simple.
What'd you say you like to do in the morning?
Okay. So I call this my gratitude walk. I start each morning, with a cup of coffee or tea, whatever, and head outside with the dog. And she leads the way in the yard and shows me where all the animals have been. In fact, this morning there was an armadillo walking through the woods. And so we
Oh,
tracked
good.
that. Yeah. But I use that time to really just practice gratitude, kind of to center myself. I don't take my phone with me. I don't take, any electronics. I just try to be present in what's going on in the world, in my yard at that particular time. And
Yeah.
it only takes about 10 minutes. And, um, and I find that really does help center me, and just the transition of going from inside to outside, of spending a little time out in the world
I
is.
think that's huge. Just
Yeah.
getting out, especially at a time like this. And in between armadillos and squirrels and things like that, you just reflect on what you appreciate, your blessing,
Yeah.
what's good?
What's good.
That does something for us, doesn't it?
Well, it is. And there's actually research that, when we practice and rehearse the things that are good,
Yeah.
and pay attention to those and replay them
Yeah.
and retell those stories, that it also lights up our brain. That's a
Yeah.
positive way to get that dopamine dump, and
There you
to,
go.
yeah, and, and to keep you in a positive frame of mind. And the other thing is, you'll just notice more positive things. You know,
Yeah.
um, you'll
They're
just
there.
notice more. They're
They are
there,
absolutely there if we're seeing them.
and you'll
Yeah.
enjoy them more. They'll find, you'll see them and you'll enjoy them more. It's
Yeah.
pretty. I have it, that's been my experience. So.
Yeah, I think with so much stress and unrest, I think it'd be good coming up soon if we talk about the things that tend to block us from that, from seeing
Okay.
things,
Sure.
remove the blockers and find new ways to open our minds to see that, so we can get a bigger, more inclusive perspective on life and what we're going through,
Hmm.
because there's always something else to see and always something else to perceive. Uh,
Absolutely. There's a
yeah,
lot
it's
out
great,
there.
wonderful. All right. Well, thanks for all that great information from your expertise and background. Um, like we said before, you and I have worked together for over a decade
Yes.
in companies, training individuals, training teams, training full, and bringing full teams on to various aspects of what's healthy in the workplace. And that's why we call it biz therapy, because what we do is business therapy. It helps
Right.
people
Hmm.
be better, respond better, work better, all that
Hmm.
sort of thing. So that's what
Hmm.
we aim at in these podcasts.
Yeah.
All right.
Helping you
Well,
be better at work. That's
yes,
right.
absolutely. Better at work, which means better everywhere.
Right.
If you can pull that off, you're going to be better. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks
All
for your
right.
time. Good to get together again.
Yeah. Good to get
And
together, John. Thanks.
we'll get together again soon. Take care.
Okay. All
All
right.
right. Bye.
Bye.